Well, good morning, Kelowna, and we're in the short distance now from our wonderful Christmas and holiday season coming up, and and we're looking forward to our really special show on the 22nd coming up. We're going to push it to 3 hours and have lots of special guests on. But today, I have a very special guest with me. Dan Bruce is with me today. Ken is off this week, and Dan is sitting in his chair, the coveted Ken Salvail chair. And I'm happy to have Dan with me. But first of all, let's go to the tips and plants of the week. Well, my tip of the week is all about how to take care of your Christmas tree, your cut Christmas tree. Make a fresh cut just before bringing in the Christmas tree, and use boiling hot water for the first fill up. And everybody cringes when I say that. Ooh, it can't be good for the tree. It is very good for the tree. It makes it start to drink. It melts things down, melts any sap that is hardened down there. It melts it, and it starts to drink. And that first night, it should drink like crazy. The water should be dropping like crazy. The tree's filling up, and the needles will get turgid. As a matter of fact, some people like to get the tree set up and give it that first initial firing up of boiling hot water, and not decorate it to make sure that the tree is in fact drinking water, because it really needs to drink to stay fresh. And you never let the water go down below the cut-off trunk, or it will reseal. And my plant of the week this week is the Christmas tree. All sorts of different kinds. The most common would be the Douglas fir. And Dan and I are going to chat about that, the Douglas fir. It's called a fir. It's not even a fir. It's something else. And we'll talk about why it was called a fir and why it's not a fir. There we go. And your tip and plant of the week?
Well, Ken, I'm not as smart as Ken. I don't really have a tip of the week, other than sort of at this time of year. Stay warm. That's generally a good idea. My plant of the week, I think, would have to be a rose, Darlow's Enigma, a white rose raised in the U.S. not that long ago. It's a fairly new variety, but mine has just finished flowering.
Aren't we lucky? And you were saying you just lost your geranium.
The geraniums went down the night before last, but Darlow's Enigma has kept going.
Well, we are very lucky to be living in a neck of the woods that here we are getting on towards the middle of December, and I just finished my last cherry tomatoes. I had bowls of green cherry tomatoes. They were actually grape tomatoes, like the grape-shaped ones.
Oh, yeah.
And I had bowls of them, and I picked them green. I picked every last grape tomato and had a big salad bowl full of them. And we just finished the last ones. The last ones ripened up, and they were tasted just fresh as anything. So now I got tomatoes growing in the greenhouse. I'm hoping I'll have only maybe a couple of months tomatoless, maybe 2 months tomatoless. And then, of course, tomatoes are important in my life. I need tomatoes. I grew up on them. Dan, it's great to have you here today. You brought with you a book. And we're going to talk about that book at some point here. It's a fabulous book. In fact, I don't even feel like doing the show. I feel like grabbing that book and reading it. But anyway, I won't do that. I'll do the show, because that's why I'm here. That's why I get paid the big bucks to be here to do this show. And so how are things looking, other than the fact that your geranium is down? How are you bring in a lot of your tropical. You got a fabulous selection of succulents and tropical plants that you keep on your deck through the summer months. And then you keep them just by putting them in that light room, don't you? Just that you have a artificial light.
Well, there's they go into what is the laundry room, because the washer and dryer there, and it's downstairs. There's no natural light at all. It's just artificial lights, and pretty much get them in wherever they'll fit, because each year it becomes more and more difficult. And you have to make some choices sometimes. Some you just get too big.
Yeah.
Others you can prune down, and then of course you inevitably pick up little ones and think, oh, that one won't make much difference, so you bring it home, and there you go. It's an endless cycle. But I keep them downstairs in the laundry room. I can keep an eye on things the rare occasions when I actually use the washer dryer.
There you go.
It does provide some humidity, and for houseplants, and I mean, unless they're really desert succulents for houseplants. 99% of houses in the Okanagan are way, way, way too dry. Plants need humidity, and in the wintertime, the Okanagan is not humid.
Right. When we have our heat on and whatnot, it's very, very dry, and that's the challenge. There's two real challenges for house plants, in particular tropical plants indoors, is the lack of humidity, and then of course the short days, the lack of light, and also just the fact that because of the lack of light, they try and grow, and so they stretch for light, and so they get long and spindly. But the other real critical thing for people is salt buildup. A lot of people don't water properly when they water and wash away the excess salts, and they let those salts build up in the soil so that the roots just can't function. And I used to call that the silent killer of houseplants, because instead of just going around and kind of peeing on the houseplant with a little bit of water, you need to give them good soaking so that the water goes through and washes away those excess salts every once in a while. It's called leaching.
Yeah, I had that problem with some seedlings. I went to independent grocers, and to my amazement, they had a fruit in their produce. What I grew up with as a kid, it was called sweet sop.
Okay.
And it's a really attractive thing. Anyway, I couldn't believe my eyes there. For the first time since I was a teenager, was sweet sop in front of me for sale. So I bought them, took them home, and I made a bit of a pig of myself with them. But I saved the seeds and planted them, and I've got 2 sweet sop seedlings coming up. But one of them had that silent killer problem. And it lost all its leaves.
Yep.
I thought it was gone, and I thought, no, probably not. So I watered it, let the water drain through. No saucer underneath it, just let it drain through. And it leafed out again. It's still doing okay.
Wonderful.
Yep.
That's a great feeling, isn't it? And, well, you do have a green thumb. And there is such a thing as a green thumb. My dad had a green thumb. I've had to work at my green thumb. I've had to work and learn various things, but I've met people.
Don, my green thumb is put on there with a marker. Oh, it's not natural.
No, I've always considered you as someone with a green thumb. But there are people, you've met them. They do everything wrong. Everything in with their plants. They let the salts build up. They just but the plants just survive. They like the person who's looking after them. There's a plant in town, and you can visit it. One of the best places in town to get your tires fixed, and your automobile service is Salvail Tires. And if you go into their waiting room, they've got a Schefflera, an umbrella, big leafed umbrella. That plant has been there for 35 years. It's got a trunk on it that's 6 or 8 inches in diameter, but they keep, of course, pruning it back so that it's in a big, huge pot, maybe the size of a half-oak barrel, and it has been sitting there down all these years. I don't think they feed it. I just don't understand how it stays alive. I've even touched it a couple of times to see if it's real. It's that cool. And then other people have plants, and they'll bring them home from the store, and within 2 weeks they're dead. Anyway.
I know that feeling.
Yeah,
I know that feeling.
Anyway, 250-862-2525 to join Dan and I today on the AM 1150 Garden Show. We're going to have some fun. Dan is a wealth of knowledge, and he's just a fascinating guy. And like I say, he's brought a really cool book along we're going to talk about at some point this morning. And just to review some of the things that are going on, one of the things is we are so close now to the shortest day of the year coming up. December 21st will be the shortest day of the year, and then they'll start getting longer again. So today is 8 hours and 1 minute shorter than the longest day on June 21st. So today is 8 hours and 13 minutes long. It's only a short little 8-hour day, 8 hours of light. And that's pretty cool when you think about it. My things in the greenhouse are getting getting the full 8 hours, but in the house a little less. But after that date, 21st of December, things are starting to get longer and longer as we go along. And yes. Okay, now we're going to go to the phone lines before we take a short break, and that's Bert. Good morning, Bert.
What can you do when you plant potatoes and they don't come up any bigger than an Aggie. And why would that be? Different types of potatoes, and what's lacking to make them stay that small?
Okay, and this is, of course, outdoors, Bert, in the season. And you've tried different varieties, and they're all small like that?
That's right.
Well, sometimes a lack of phosphorus in the soil will have an effect on the size of root crops, tubers, and rooted vegetables. So you might want to get some super phosphate, that's a 044-0, and apply that.
Okay, thanks very much.
That's about all I can think about, Bert. I appreciate your call.
You bet.
You bet. Take care. And 250-862-2525 is how to get through to us today on the telephone. And you can email me at don@thegardenexpert.com as well. You could even text. You could text. We do texting now too, and we're on Facebook, and we're all those mediums. Dan, are you on? Do you tweet? Dan, do you tweet?
No.
You should. You're quite a birder. You're very.
No,
ornithology. You'd think an ornithologist like you would be a tweeter.
Well, that's the reason I know better than to tweet.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, we're going to take a very short break here, and we invite your calls, 250-862-2525. We'll be back with more AM 1150 Garden. Oh, how interesting it is sitting in the room with Dan Bruce talking about everything from soup to nuts. Well, actually, we weren't talking about soup, and we weren't talking about nuts. We were talking about pheasants, and Dan has a few pheasant homes on his property, and beautiful, beautiful pheasants. These are not your ringneck pheasant variety. Ringneck pheasants aren't indigenous here, are they? They were brought in, weren't they?
Yeah, they were introduced from Asia.
They're an Asian pheasant as well, then?
Yes. All pheasants in the world except one are from Asia.
Okay.
And the ringneck pheasant is widely distributed. It's naturally found from Japan right the way through to southern Europe and Turkey.
See, I didn't know that. I thought the ringneck pheasant was introduced by the Brits from Britain. It probably was introduced by the Brits, but to hunt. But
I think the ringneck pheasants in British Columbia were introduced, I think, from the stock in the USA, in Oregon. And I think that was sometime in the 1880s.
Well, we used to, well, I didn't, but the folks, the neighbors right across the street from us on Ethel Street.
Yeah.
There was a whole group of them. Ferguson, who just lived down the street. It wasn't Gary Ferguson, it was his dad, Russ, I think, Ferguson. And the Morey brothers, Ted and Satoshi, and the Shirais, and various other folks that lived in our neighborhood. Every Sunday would go on a pheasant hunt. And, here we are. We hear the guns going off, right, which is now downtown Kelowna. And it was a pheasant hunt with their dogs. Chase, running. Toby was one of their dogs. And they'd chase the pheasants up and boom, boom. And, and then they used to hang them. They'd hang them. And they said that they'd hang them outside for a long time to cure them or something before they cooked them up. I just remember that as a kid. Let's get back to your pheasant that is special, because this pheasant, one of the pheasants that you have, was hatched in 1987.
Yeah, that's the male Swinho pheasant, which is actually a native of Taiwan. And I've had this bird since 1988. It's hatched in 1987. Well-known breeder down at the coast near Cloverdale. And as of this morning, that bird is still alive.
Beautiful.
So I was in contact with the World Pheasant Association in England, and they published an article about him in their newsletter, which that was published in 2016.
Wow.
So
now it's 2018. So it's got to be the oldest pheasant in the world. I'm sitting with the man that has the oldest pheasant in the world.
That's
cool.
The assumption, yes.
Pretty
at
cool.
the moment.
So 87. That pheasant is 30 years old.
Oh yeah.
That's 30 years old.
Yeah.
Over 30. Wow. Now, to your knowledge, is that is that something quite unusual for pheasants to live that long?
Yes, you would expect a pheasant to live to maybe 15 or 16 if it were lucky.
Okay. Now, parrots live longer than that, though, don't they?
Yes, but parrots don't live as long as the urban myth
Okay.
will tell you. You hear stories about a 100-year-old parrot, and that's not the case. No, that's not the case.
Tortoise maybe, but not a parrot.
Tortoises can live quite a while.
Yeah.
But no, 100-year-old parrots are not alive anymody anymore. They've been mounted and
that's right.
on the wall.
They might be alive in their body might still exist, but they're not alive. It's like the Monty Python parrot. Yeah. Anyway, we are going to go to the phone lines. We have a beautiful young lady on the line that I love dearly, and her name is Teresa. Teresa Hodge. Good morning, Teresa.
Good morning, Donnie. How are you?
I'm well. Happy Christmas to you coming up.
And you as well.
Yeah.
I was listening, and I was thinking to myself, of course, last time I was talking to you, I had all these bulbs to put in. I had ordered all these bulbs, and I threw them in the garden. Well, of course, I always get more than I'm supposed to.
Right.
And I have some left over, tulip bulbs and a few others, and I was thinking about, well, maybe I'll force them. Mm-hmm. I have no clue other than you put them in a pot and throw them in a fridge. But how do you force bulbs? What am I supposed to do?
Well, pretty easy in the Okanagan, especially when we're having a weather like we're having here, Teresa. Just plant them into pots and leave them outside.
Leave them outside.
Leave them outside. Yeah, leave them outside. It can get to be 5, 10 below, and those tulips will they're right now. This is perfect weather for them to root into that. Now you leave them outside for maybe a month.
Okay.
And then bring them inside. Now they think it's spring, and they'll start to grow, and they'll that's called forcing.
And so I can do that anytime.
You can do that anytime. Do it. Yep.
Great.
This afternoon, as a matter of fact.
Okay. Well, I think I have a project.
Yeah, the sooner the better, because they want to be in the pot rooting. They do all their rooting in this cool weather in the fall.
Right.
And then when it warms up, they think it's spring, and in fact, it could warm up and it could be spring if you forget to bring them in.
Well, because I would love to have tulips here in January. That would be nice.
Well, that'd be nice. Yeah, you probably, let's see.
A little quick.
You probably won't make January. You probably make Valentine's Day. How's that?
Okay, well, perfect.
Okay.
I'll give you one for Valentine's then.
Thank you. Say hello to the old man for us.
I will do so.
Okay, Teresa, thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. And we've got Rick on line 2. Good morning, Rick.
Morning, Don. Good morning, Bruce.
Morning.
It's actually Dan Bruce.
I'm sorry?
It's actually Dan Bruce.
I'm
but that's
sorry,
okay
Dan.
to call him by his last name. It's been happening his entire life, so.
Yeah, I can handle it. It's okay.
Be mad at me now. You got to answer my question, even though I said your name wrong.
Yeah, we're not mad at you, Rick.
I know. So I was over at Costco, and I bought a poinsettia.
Ah, yes.
On the sticker is decorative 14-inch. Well, this thing is healthy as ever. The pot is 13 inches across, 10 inches deep, and the actual flower from the top of the pot to the top is 20 inches. It's a monster. It's a monster plant.
A big one. A really big one. Yeah.
Now, I live in a house with, I don't have gas, I've got electric heat. The thing seems to be doing all right, but I got a couple of questions. Number one, can you replant these in the spring?
You can put them in the garden in the spring, yes.
That's what I was asking. Okay. Number two, you're talking about salt buildup. I can't do it because the pot itself is sealed. So there's no hole in the bottom of this pot? No, it's a decorative pot that I've got it on top of the coffee table.
Well, that's fine, but that is the cardinal sin of these folks that sell plants that have no drainage in the bottom. Drainage is important for the salt issue, but not so much the salt issue in a young plant or a new plant like that. Where the issue is Rick, is in the root rot, which happens.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Now, what's happening there, if it is in a decorative pot with no holes in the bottom, that was a plant that was put together recently. In other words, you'll probably find, if you ever decide you want to take this apart, you'll find it's probably got 3 6-inch poinsettia plants in that one big decorative pot.
I think so, yes.
It's an arrangement, right? Is it one color, or there?
No, it's all one color. It's all pure white. Pure red.
Yeah, what we used to do is put red, white, and a pink one together, and tricolor we call them. And however,
this was done, I think for offices.
Yeah.
Now,
And short-lived, because if it's in a pot like that, you've really got have to have a green thumb to keep that alive.
okay. The next thing, do I need to give it any? If I want to try to keep it alive, do I have to give it any food, or just they
I
say
wouldn't.
to water it only when it's very dry?
Yeah, let it get real dry, and then give it a little drink. If it's showing signs of drooping a little bit, you want to give it a little bit more water than less. But don't feed it, because the food is just going to accumulate in there, and that'll burn the roots.
Okay. If you get a can of beer and you put it into a glass, the size of glass that takes that can of beer, I've been doing that once a day. Is that too much?
That's way too much water, especially if there's no drainage.
Okay,
more water than you need to, Rick. Back off on the watering.
Okay, and then after Christmas, this one's pretty well had the biscuit, eh?
Well, not really. What I would do if it was my plant is I would lift the plants out and put them into separate pots.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, to save their lives, because it's not going to live a long time in those conditions. The interesting thing, and we've got to move along here a bit because we got more callers. But Rick, after Christmas, we used to have a few points. So we'd grow 1,500 or 15,000 poinsettias, and we'd have a few left over after Christmas. Some stragglers, we called them, and they never looked better because we started neglecting them. And the neglected poinsettias were stronger and healthier than the ones that were constantly watered on the bench coming up to Christmas. They recovered nicely. It was interesting how that happened. And so I've always said the poinsettia is quite a resilient plant. It can get on the dry side. Heavens, they live in a dry country, don't they, Dan?
Well, the poinsettia is, in fact, a euphorbia.
A euphorbia, which is a drought-tolerant plant.
It's native of Mexico.
Yeah.
So hot, dry conditions are what it needs. If I were in your position and wanted to keep that plant you've got, I would repot it right away, because that
good advice.
That sealed decorative pot is it's well named. It's decorative. No other use.
I do have pots. So two things really quick. Then what I'll do, it'll survive because I've got it, and I'm not very good with indoor plants, so the thing will probably be great. And I will replant it probably in about another week or so. Maybe I've got pots outside. I'll just replant them.
Yep, good idea.
Okay, well, thank you, fellas. Have a great day.
Thank you for the call. Appreciate it. Now, are we going to go to the next caller here? Yes, we are. Dennis, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning, Don, and your guest. I'm sorry I forgot your name.
It's Dan.
It's Dan. Hi.
Yeah. Dan and Dawn.
The Don and Dan show.
Yeah.
Yes, I do remember those beautiful poinsettias at the Burnett's nurseries on Ethel Street. Yeah, they were worth coming to see. Now, my question about poinsettias. Now, Don, you and Ken talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago, and this is the watering issue. The previous gentleman was on. I understand that. However, a lot of these decorative plants, especially if you buy them from Costco, they've got a gorgeous plastic sealer tray in there. So you've got the sealer tray, the plastic sealer tray, then you've got the decorative foil. My question this morning is, my wife and I are talking about putting holes in the plastic sealer tray. Now, having said that, I guess I should pull out the pot and see if there are holes in it, and I assume there are. Now, is that plastic sealer tray a negative? Should it be taken out? And I put the plant in the pot leave the foil on, of course, and put it in a tray. I'm kind of asking. I'm not too sure.
Anything that prohibits the water from draining out of that pot, is negative. It's not a good thing. You got to have drainage. It's just the worst thing a person can do is grow plants in a pot with no drainage. Now, again, I've seen people do it, and it just blows my mind. I was doing some physiotherapy a couple of weeks ago, and some of the plants, the dish gardens that you buy at Christmas time to give to folks. In this office, they had a dish garden from last year with a poinsettia and tropicals in it, no drainage. Now, it just goes against everything that's real, it just goes against. But that is not normal. Normally, that would kill plants. So, Dennis?
So
just make sure that you've got drainage. I mean, I don't know you've got the sealer thing underneath and all. Just make sure that you've got drainage.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, gentlemen.
Hey, you're very welcome.
Merry Christmas if I don't talk to you.
All the best to you, and tune in on the 22nd. We got our special Christmas show.
We'll be there.
Okay, but take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. And on that note, we are going to take a short break, and we invite your calls, 250-862-2525, to get through to us today. We'll be back with more AM 1150 Garden. Well, we are back with you on the AM 1150 Garden Show, and we invite your calls, 250-862-2525. If you've got any concerns about indoor plants right now, this is the time to call us because, there's a lot of people have indoor plants now. I mean, there's nothing like having some of that life inside at this time of year when the days are short and, it's kind of dreary. And to have that greenery inside is very, very helpful to us as human beings, I think. My son, who lives in Vancouver now, has his first houseplant. It's a spathiphyllum. Spathiphyllum is one of the easier ones to look after. Peace lily. And he's enjoying it. He phones me every once in a while and says, "Dad, I got a brown leaf on my spathiphyllum." Well, Joe, leaves get brown. I mean, periodically, that's not a big deal. It's when a lot of leaves turn brown. And where are they turning brown? Are they turning brown from the margins? Is it marginal necrosis, dying from the margins in? Or are they turning brown from the inside out? It's all a factor. But the spathiphyllum is an easy one. You very seldom can overwater a spathiphyllum. As a matter of fact, these fish that you buy, they're called... not angelfish, but these big fish, these blue and black fish that you buy in a jar.
Oh, you mean Siamese fighting fish?
Yeah, and you buy them in a
betas.
Yeah, and they often have a plant submerged in there. And one of the plants that you often see are spathiphyllums that are totally immersed in water, and they seem to do quite well in those conditions. Some plants would not, but this particular one does. So. There are easy ones. Another easy one is the pothos, the devil's ivy. That's a real easy plant to look after. Do you have any favorite easy plants, Ken? Hello, Ken. You're not Ken. You're Dan.
That's right, Bill.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite easy plants for people that are looking for something easy to have in the house?
Well, there's most of the cacti are pretty easy. Mm-hmm. But people have issues with it because it's a matter of identification.
Oh.
And not everything that is a succulent is a cactus.
Right.
And one of the problems, of course, is that the garden centers bring in quantities of even tropicals. Mm-hmm. And there's no identification on them. You have no idea what you're getting. So it looks attractive at that stage. You buy it, you take it home. Because you can't identify it, you cannot look it up and find out what conditions it really needs. Mm-hmm. How big is it going to grow? How fast is it going to grow? Mm-hmm. Does it need water a little bit of water all the time, or let it dry right out, or what?
Yeah.
Without the proper name of it, you really don't know what you're doing.
Right.
And this is one of the biggest stumbling blocks in successful gardening around here. Across the country, for that matter.
Yeah, it's getting things properly named at the garden centers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the cacti can be really easy to grow and quite spectacular in the spring and summer when they flower.
Mm-hmm. You can almost say all cacti are succulents, but not all succulents are cacti.
Right.
Because a succulent is just a description of a plant that has a meaty leaf to it.
Yeah, a lot of moisture in the leaf. And of course, if you overwater a succulent, it will, because it's its nature to gather and conserve water in the leaf system, it will not be able to stop doing that.
Right.
So you end up with root rot, leaf rot.
Right.
The thing will just
And Ken's often mentioned that too. If you want to know how to look after a plant, find out where it originated.
Well, that's your first step.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people around have pachypodiums,
right?
Madagascar palms, as they're called. Well, the only right thing about that is that they are from Madagascar. And they will rejoice in a very, very alkaline soil.
Okay. Madagascar is quite chalky.
Yes.
Alkaline. Yeah.
And sort of a hard pan alkaline soil that dries out for maybe several months at a time, they can handle that. So if you give them conditions that are too good, they will tend to grow too fast, get too big, get top heavy. And I mean, I did once experience getting what was probably a 6 foot to 7 foot high pachypodium down from the top of one of those towers, by the dolphins. I got it from about the top floor right to the bottom.
Wow.
And I don't want to repeat that experience. No. In fact, I flatly refuse to repeat that experience.
Well,
but it was growing very well. It was a healthy specimen.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's amazing, as I said before, the conditions can be absolutely opposite to what a plant normally would like, but they're doing well. It's just something is right. It's like my beautiful Schefflera, the umbrella tree at Cavell Tire. I just, every time I go in there, I marvel at it. I don't even look at the magazines. I just sit there and stare at the plant. But fabulous. 250-862-2525 to get through to us. I think, Grinder, we should take a break and invite the calls, because we got the big break coming up at 9 o'clock. So we're going to do that, and give us a call, 250-862-2525, and we'll be back with more. AM 1150. We are back with you and enjoying every darn minute of it. We love being here every week. This is our 1001st show on this station, and we're celebrating all through December here, the fact that we hit the 1,000 mark. The fact is, though, we've almost hit 1,800, when you consider the shows right from 1983. But, so it's really kind of special to be here every Saturday morning, and it's real special to have Dan Bruce with me today. He's one of my best friends, and he's such a knowledgeable guy and just a darn nice guy, too. But on that note, enough of that mush. We're going to go to the phone lines here, and we're going to talk to Betty. Good morning, Betty. Hello, Betty.
Yes, good morning. Hey, your guest, Dan, is a very welcome guest. Season's greetings to you both, however. And he got the show off to a good start regarding our dry homes and watering houseplants. But conversations since have me calling in. I'm calling from a senior's residence, where we have a beautiful atrium full of artificial plants and palms, but included in there are 2 live potted plants, trees almost now. And they are in stressful condition because no one seems to water them. They're under the heat that blows down from the ceiling. And when I suggested that to someone that they might need more water, they're losing their leaves. The whole floor is covered in leaves. When I suggested to them they could be who's watering them, they say, well, plants go dormant anyway. And boy, that blew me away.
Well, it all depends, Betty. I appreciate your call, by the way. And it all depends on what species we're dealing with here. It's sounding almost like it could be a ficus, like a weeping fig. Are these small leaves, relatively small leaves?
Well, I'll just say medium for lack of knowing.
I'm just thinking that's what...
I don't know what kind of plant the one deciduous is.
Right.
Or it's not deciduous.
Yeah, it's just broadleaf.
It's a house plant that's losing leaves.
Yeah,
in fact, it was twice as tall, and it's lost all its above leaves. They've taken them away and trimmed the stalk that's sticking up in the air for 5 feet.
Well, it's really hard to say what the issue is there. And oftentimes people that are looking after plants don't have a real depth of knowledge, and we can't blame them for that because it's quite a journey learning the ins and outs of growing plants and understanding them. However, sometimes, I think of atriums, large plantings. There's one in Vernon, a very, very, it's been around for a long time at the Lodge Hotel in Vernon, a huge atrium. And they're doing quite well, and I was quite amazed. Donna and I had dinner there not too long ago, and was very, very impressed. I think Betty, that if you gave me a call at home, I'm in the book. Give me a call, and you can, and maybe if you're not too far away, in my travels, I can pop in and just have a quick look and see how they're doing, and maybe give you some of my advice.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that.
My mother was in Cottonwoods, and I believe it was Burnett's that gave them this lovely big entrance tree. And that thing, it wasn't being watered properly either. It's long since gone. But anyway, I like your idea. Yes, I will give you a ring.
Okay, give me a call at home. Thanks, Betty.
Thank you
Appreciate
so much. Merry Christmas to you.
All the best to you too, Betty. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Okay. And Yvonne, good morning. You're the last caller of this segment.
Oh, hello there.
Hi.
Hi. I was just driving down the highway. I've never heard your show before, and I thought, man, I have a question for you.
Good.
We started an avocado
Yes.
from a seed. It
Yes.
started off as kind of a fun thing to do with my son, and it grew up. We put toothpicks in it, and it grew up, and we got a whole bunch of leaves on there. And just recently, we put it into a pot with some soil. And now all of the leaves are starting to go brown from the outside. Is this because we're not draining it, or
it's just a little bit of shock from going from pure wet and no oxygen in the thing to all of a sudden the roots. Some of those roots might be a little less. When you transfer an avocado from the water into soil, first of all, you should do it sooner than later. Don't wait until the plant is really established and the roots are massive in the jar before you do that.
Okay.
Earlier the better. Secondly, when you do that, try and duplicate the conditions. In other words, you put it into a pot, but keep it really, really wet, like sopping wet, and then gradually wean it off the water into its regular routine houseplant. Now, it probably isn't going to die. It's probably those leaves have just said, holy mackerel, the conditions have changed here, and I think I'll abort my foliage, and then I will regrow. I believe that's what's going to happen there. They're pretty tolerant.
well, that's a good thing, because I definitely have a brown thumb.
Yeah.
But everybody was so excited to see this plant grow, and I'm thinking, uh-oh.
Yeah. No, I think you're okay. Keep it well lit. I've got one that was given to me, and I put it in the greenhouse, and the darn thing ended up getting some infestation of whitefly on it, and I think it came in with it. And so I said, well, hey, you're either going to do or die. I'm like Dan Bruce. When he sees a plant that's that's struggling, he just says, hey, you're on your own. So I literally cut my avocado right off. And do you know, it's got adventitious shoots now coming, and there was no buds or anything there, but it's pushing new growth right from the stem where I didn't think it was going to survive. So there you go. It's starting to push again. So they're pretty resilient.
Okay, well, we've picked the right plant at least.
Yeah. There
Thanks
you
so
go.
much for your help.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for the call. We appreciate it. Okay, now we're getting I guess we're getting fairly close to the end of the first section here. But let's just go back to my notes. We often bring up Elaine Cameron, which we're going to do in the next segment. I've got her December diary on hand here, and Dan Bruce has brought along a book. Let's give people a little hint so that they're going to get excited and stay tuned in the following. What would be a good hint? First of all, it has a map of the Okanagan Valley from 1886.
Oh, it does. I would say it's one of the standard historical accounts of life in the Okanagan.
Now
it's a classic.
Isn't that cool?
Yes.
And I didn't even know it existed. And you know me, I just love our history in the Okanagan. It was written in 1948.
Yep.
Published in 1948 by a gentleman that I haven't heard of. His name is
Halliday.
Halliday.
Yes. And the book.
Did Bob Hayes recognize the name?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes. You got to get up really early to catch Bob Hayes not knowing something.
Yeah, that's right.
No, this is a copy of the classic book, The Valley of Youth, which is an account of life in the Okanagan in the early days before, a lot of these places were established.
Mm-hmm.
This copy has some sort of significance, I suppose, because it belonged to Dick Hall,
right,
who used to live out in the mission, and he and his brother Buster.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Dick Hall. He used to grow gladioli.
Yes. We used to buy them. Yeah.
He also used to bury grapefruit and orange peels in his garden to get some organic material in there, and he I guess he liked grapefruit because he always seemed to be burying grapefruit, and it was like a dog with a bone, actually.
Yeah.
But they worked really well to keep the soil in good condition.
I wonder if it added a little bit of acidity to the soil too, because we can always use a little bit of acid.
Well, certainly, because the soil around here is
quite
anything but acid.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, we're right at the end of our rope here as far as time goes for the first segment, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about Dan's wonderful book that he's found, and he actually has a copy. Am I not surprised that you have a copy? You have a copy of every book in the world, I think. But anyway, he has a copy as well.
As you've gathered, Don does exaggerate from time to time.
I like to exaggerate a little bit. 250-862-2525, and we'll be back soon with more AM 1150 Garden Show. Well, here we are back with you. The sun's almost poking through here, which is great. What great weather we've been having down. It's a nice, long, stretched-out fall. We're very fortunate. The only thing I don't like about this mild weather is it helps with the rat population. I mean, it helps encourage rats to keep moving. And I don't like to even use the word rat, but unless you got a couple of rat hunters like you have in your property, rats can be a problem.
We've got rats, and I think they're pretty much throughout the Okanagan now.
Yeah.
Some people have told me, they don't have rats. I say, well, open both your eyes, you'll see them. But I have a dog who is quite into rats.
Does he bring them home?
He doesn't eat them. He just kills them and brings them and lays them down where I'm going to find them. And
here you go.
That's okay. But I've also got a resident pair of great horned owls.
They love rats too,
and they are also into rats. Now I'm just hoping that the owls stick around. That's a bit of a toss-up. One thing about lake country is that it is growing way too fast. And there's a whole lot of people moving in there and inevitably chopping down trees, clearing stuff that doesn't really need to be cleared.
Yeah.
And I have noted, I moved into lake country myself in, when was it, 1985? And the number of bird species that were there
are no longer there?
A huge number of them are no longer there. You just don't see them anymore.
Yeah, there are, it's amazing how it is changing. But people are moving here for the same reason they moved here when my dad and mom came here, or my dad's family came here in 1922. Kind of hard that my dad said, well, I guess that's a process of life, process of, progress or whatever. It is, but we can get into that.
People move for a variety of good and a few bad reasons. But I moved here myself, so I'm not saying don't move. It's just
don't cut a bunch of trees down.
It does have a negative effect.
It does. I want to go to Elaine Cameron's diary just for a moment here, because we are looking at December 8th right now, in 2018. On December 8th of 1950, which this is from, is rain fell most of the morning. Heavy fog, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So, there were falls like this back then too.
Oh yeah.
And it was right after the coldest winter in history. 4950 was the coldest winter in not in history, but in recent recorded history. 4950 was the coldest year. Dad talked about the winter of 4950 all his life. It was a year that the lake froze over. It was just a real cold winter. And here we are the following fall, and it's 40 degrees on the 8th of December, 1950. Interesting. And dug out peonies, on the 14th of December, dug out peonies and replanted by the birch trees. She left a hole covered up, ready for, I don't know what she's got here, but her writing was awful. I could hardly read it. Brisa vera or something. And then on the 16th, heavy snowfall, evening, 2 inches of snow. So there you go. We can expect anything. What do you think? What are you betting? Are we going to have a white Christmas, do you think? What's the bet? What does the Farmer's Almanac say?
I don't know. I have not looked. But I have found that if you get on the telephone and call Environment Canada, they have a phone-in weather service.
Right. Or you can go to the website.
No, you can go to the website, but I think the telephone one is good because they bring it up to date.
Oh, okay.
At any time. They're not proud. They'll change their mind, and they're really very accurate.
It's amazing how accurate they are nowadays. I still think the old weather ship did a pretty good job back in the day. When they said a storm was coming, a storm came.
People are very, very,
a little more
very
sophisticated.
quick to give bad press to the weather people. But all right, fine. You try predicting the weather.
Yeah, no, I know. Okay. We're 250-862-2525 to get through to us today on the Garden Show. Coming up in a couple of weeks, we're going to be having our very special garden show. Very Christmas. We'll have all sorts of things going on. In fact, Dan's going to come by and visit on that day as well. We'll have Brian Minter phoning in saying hello. We've got Valdi calling in. We've got several guests phoning in from out of town. But we also I'm going to have my family on as well. We're going to have a crowded room here. Donna and my daughter Lindsay, and possibly my daughter and her wife Elisa and Bree, and maybe my granddaughter Ellie. And we'll have a crowded room, a crowded house. Not all the way through, but they'll come and visit us and say hello. And we invite you to call in and visit us as well on the 22nd, coming up a couple of weeks from now. And that we call it our Christmas Garden Show. And it all started back in 1983 when the show was brand new, and I invited my family on for Christmas. My mom came on, my dad came on, and my brother Al was on, and it was special. And Dad would sometimes sing a song, or sometimes I would just play his music that he's recorded on the air, and I've carried that tradition on. So you'll be hearing some of Dad's stuff on the air as well. And Mom would read a poem. We haven't got anybody. Would you like to read a poem, Dan? Because Mom would do that, but nobody's kind of taken that over.
You've just made the assumption that I am literate.
Yeah, you are literate. You can read. I've seen you read. So stay tuned to that. That's a couple of weeks on the 22nd, just prior to Christmas. And what else have I got going on here? I actually should go to my notes because that always helps. Let's talk about a few plants that are available at Christmas time just before we go to the first break here. Of course, the poinsettia, but we've talked enough about the poinsettia. Another plant that people often buy and see on the shelf at Christmas time are the azaleas, the Japanese evergreen azalea. And they're forced into bloom at this time of year. There's one that you don't let dry out. You have to keep them moist. If you let an azalea dry out, the plant itself will recover, but it won't recover just by watering the top of they're planted in straight peat moss. And the only way after an azalea, if you have an azalea and it's got too dry and it's drooping, the only way to get that azalea back is to plunge it into a bucket of water and let it soak up. And I've seen that done so many times when we were had our business. People would bring in an azalea that was bone dry and they said, "What's going on with this?" Well, it's like feather light and there's no moisture in there. Well, I keep watering it. Well, when you water peat moss, it's hydrophobic, and the water just rolls down the side of the pot. It doesn't penetrate into the center of the peat moss. So you're just tickling it. You're not really soaking it. So you got to if that happens to you, rather than take it back to the store, plunge it into a sink or a bucket of water, and you watch that thing pop back. So that's the azaleas. Kalanchoe, or Kalanchi. I've heard several different pronunciations of Kalanchoe, but I think the proper name is Kalanchoe. And Kalanchoe are one of the plants that you'll see on the market today. Easy one to grow. not that easy to get to bloom again for some reason. I've got one in the greenhouse right now, and it's not looking like it wants to bloom again. It's I don't know what triggers the bloom on those, but when you buy them, they're in bloom. They're a beautiful plant, but they make a nice foliage plant even if they don't bloom again for you, and they'll go on and on and on. Some plants you can carry on for years. Some plants, they are a one-shot deal. Potted mums being one of those. The potted chrysanthemum is pretty much a one-shot thing. When it's finished, it's pretty much done. They don't do that well outside because they need a long period of short days in order to bloom. So often the potted mums that you buy as a house plant will bloom in the house. You put them outside and they don't bloom until so late that the frost gets them before they can bloom. Christmas cactus, we've talked a lot about Christmas cactus. They're one of my favorite plants and certainly one of Ken's favorite plants, the Schlumbergia. And they come in all sorts of different colors, from anywhere from pretty much pure white to the fuchsia colors and the various other pinks and whatnot. And then, of course, there's the mixed dish gardens. We talked a little bit about those, the ones where they're called European dish gardens, and they have a selection of various plants in there. What I recommend doing with those is enjoying them as an arrangement of plants for the first little while, and then maybe in March, April, separate them and put them into separate pots, and now you've got yourself a bunch of house plants that are good. I got out of a dish garden that Donna purchased at Brian Minter's garden center in February when we were through last year. She bought it in February. By the time May came, I'd split it up and I had 13 tropical plants out of there, ranging from ivy to that kalanchoe was in there, and all sorts of different plants. 13 plants out of one dish garden. What a great way to fill your house full of house plants, by buying a dish garden and splitting it up. And then, of course, the poinsettia. So there we go. Those are some of the plants you'll see on the shelf. And if you have any questions about any one of those, give us a call, 250-862-2525. Now, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with more AM 1150 Gardens. Don Burnett and Dan Bruce are here today, helping you with your gardening dilemmas and actually having a fabulous chat. I don't get to spend a lot of time with Dan, and we've been talking plants, of course, but he's brought along with him a book. And now it was published in 48, but it was written as well in that era, or did he?
Well, it would have been written before that, but
yeah. But it wasn't written in 1886 when the map was there. No, it was written.
No, that's just the map in the end papers.
And so, and it is mainly about the Okanagan Valley.
Oh yeah, it's pretty much. It is a classic of Okanagan history.
So why haven't I heard of it before this?
Well, I don't know, Don.
I mean, why have I not heard of this book? Isn't that awful? That's terrible. I need to have a copy of that book.
Well, they do appear from time to time. So
when one appears, you're going to get me a copy.
Well, I could probably have some influence. This one is actually going to a
good home.
A good home. I have a copy myself, but occasionally they show up. Yeah. Unfortunately, we've lost one of the best little bookshops in the valley. It's recently closed up in Kelowna. That was Eyebrows Books on Ellis.
Okay.
Which is gone now.
Oh dear.
But that would have been a place to look for a copy.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I know, it has not been reprinted. So when you do find a copy, it'll be an original 1948 edition.
Right. And it's called
The Valley of Youth.
The Valley of Youth. Now, why did he call the book The Valley of Youth?
Well, why were you called Don?
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I'm just wondering because, I mean, it means...
I think in the days of early settlement, I mean, the Okanagan was certainly seen as a place where youth could flourish and, establish.
Right. You would come here when you were young. Elderly folk didn't come here.
It was not a retirement center.
No.
It needed some work to make it work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's probably why he called it that. Because in the old days, in the 1800s, if you were up in your 70s and 80s, you're not going to move to the Okanagan.
And then, of course, there was the same sort of philosophy that they call Greenland to make it look attractive.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Greenland. Iceland was more appropriate.
Iceland was totally appropriate, yes, except that, of course, it's one of the hottest spots on the face of the earth for volcanism.
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
So back to the book. This book that we have here is written not firsthand, but it's written by someone who was a historian, right?
Yeah, or a resident of the
valley. And he got his information from where?
Well, the great school of life out there, and obviously talking to a number of other people who had been here. He does certainly give credit to the provincial archives in Victoria.
Right.
It has one of the illustrations is that famous one of the Bactrian camel,
right?
That was one of the camels brought into British Columbia for transport. Up the towards the Caribou, and that didn't really work.
Scared the mules, I understood. The camels scared the horses and mules.
Well, there was that, but I think also in order to make camels work, you need to understand camels. You need to have an owner's manual, if you like.
That's right. They didn't come with an owner's manual. But that is an interesting part of our history, the camels, and there's so much. He probably in 1948, in the mid-40s, when he was researching this book, he probably was able to interview folk that were here in the early days. Because in 1948, if somebody came here, they were 30 years old in 1890. If that means in 1948, that's 58 years later. And they were 30. You could be talking to people that are up in their 80s that were here in the 1890s and getting firsthand knowledge from them.
Oh yeah.
Interesting. I'd love to read that book. I'm coveting that book already as I sit here. 250-862-2525. I've got Dan Bruce with me, and we're talking history. We're talking gardening. I mean, I pick Dan's brains all the time when it comes to plants, especially identification, plant identification. He has a very real knack of being able to tell me what genus things are, and even into the species, and sometimes the variety. He's got a real knack for that. And I was explaining how much fun I had when we were in Australia last year. I just really focused on the plant material there. And one of the things that Dan has stressed over the years is to try as much as possible to use proper botanical names of plants, because that way you get the proper description of them. For instance, my good friend and my daughter's father-in-law, Steve, who's a landscaper in Australia, but he's typical of many landscapers. He's more of a landscraper than a landscaper. Good at building walkways, pathways, patios, decks, infrastructure of all sorts, and not so bad even on irrigation and things like that. But his knowledge of plants was such that, and I knew this right away, we were driving around, and I saw this beautiful big tree, not a big tree, a medium-sized, smaller tree. And it was in full bloom, and it's a yellow blossom. And I said, Steve, what is that tree? It's gorgeous. He says, it's a cotton tree. I said, Steve, it's not, what do you mean a cotton tree? Well, that's what it is. It's a cotton tree. Okay. So we stopped and came to a halt. I came up to the tree, looked at it. Flower was a hibiscus. It was a hibiscus. As soon as I looked at it, it was a hibiscus. And it turns out, when I look up in the book, it's a Hibiscus tiliaceus, or common name, cotton tree. Where that name cotton tree came from, I don't know, but it'll have a history as well. I'm not saying common names are bad. It's just that they're not right. They're not correct.
Well, the thing is, you get a common name that varies from place to place. I mean, Hibiscus tiliaceus is in the Caribbean is known as maho.
Okay.
And it's a timber tree.
Timber tree.
Yeah. But in the nursery trade, you see a lot of nursery people will tell you, when you complain that things are not identified, they'll say, well, the public don't care. Well, it's up to the nursery trade to make them care.
Yeah.
Because if you go to a nursery and buy something that's really good and special and worthwhile, you bring it home, you plant it, everybody looks at it and says, wow, I really want one of those.
Mm-hmm.
Where do I get one? Well, you said you got it from this place or that place. Well, what do I ask for? I don't know.
Right.
So the nursery trade is just
Mm-hmm.
shooting itself in the foot by insisting that the public don't care, when the public have turned around and given evidence that they do care.
Yeah, they do care. And I've spent quite a bit of my latter portion of my life trying to get people a little bit more interested in learning the proper names to plants. So many people steer away from that simply because it's scary to them. And when I was young, I learned several plants by their botanical name. But as time went on, I started going, no, this is the way to go. This makes it so much more interesting as a gardener to learn that black-eyed Susan is most often going to be the Rudbeckias, but black-eyed Susan is also on a number of other plants are called black-eyed Susan or creeping Jenny or that kind of thing. In order to get the proper name and the proper identification, so if you want to buy one, you can go buy one under its proper name. You have to know the proper name. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. We can beat that one to death because it's a huge part of my life is learning these things. And the diversity of plants is incredible. Going to a place like Australia, I would love to go to Madagascar. I'd love to go to Tasmania. Love to go to some of these areas where there are plants where they really are so unique to that area that they haven't been brought out and spread around. You can see some plants that you've never seen before. Kind of fun.
Yeah, you've got that really neat picture of all those bulbs in Australia.
Yes.
That are
the hippeastrums.
Commonly sold here as amaryllis, but in fact is hippeastrum.
And the fact that when you have more than one amaryllis, it's amarylli. Like hippopotami, hippopotamus, amaryllis, amarylli. Right? Is that not correct? No, you're saying no.
I'm not too sure about that.
Okay, on that note, if you're not too sure about, we're going to come back to amaryllis. We want to talk about amaryllis and the fact that you've got a special one growing in your home, and it's something you see a lot of amaryllis on the market right now. But we're going to take a short break, and we're going to get back with more AM 1150 Garden. Having too much fun with Dan Bruce here today. We're looking through my plant pictures from Australia and having a lot of fun doing that. So 250-862-2525 to get through to us today. And again, we are talking about our coming up special Christmas special on the 22nd. So tune in for that. It'll be a 3-hour special with lots of guests and lots to talk about. Let's go through, one thing that people are concerned about at this time of year are the deer in their properties because some of the things, in particular cedars and that, are quite susceptible to deer browsing on their plants. And earlier on, we had put together a list of deer-resistant plants that Ken had helped me with, and every week we had a new plant on here. And I'm thinking possibly Dan can help us maybe add to the list. But I'm going to go through some of these deer-resistant plants it's very helpful for people because the Okanagan, here comes Bambi. We have to have Bambi in the background, prancing through the studio. And here's the list of plants. We've got lavender is the first one on the list. Lavender, lavandula. Russian sage, Perovskia. And Ken likes little spire. Hellebores, they're deer resistant. I say resistant because, a hungry deer will eat anything. Boxwood is another good plant that deer are resistant to. There's resistant to deer browsing. Rose glow barberry, any of the barberries are quite resistant to deer. Achillea, the moonshine is a good one. They're deer resistant. Butterfly bush, buddleia. I'm not sure whether both types of buddleia are resistant, but at least the regular summer butterfly bush is. Artemisias, they're pretty much deer resistant. Brunnera is deer resistant. Brunnera, good shade plant. Shasta daisies. Ken likes Becky, the variety Becky. Juniper in general, Spartan in particular. The junipers are quite resistant to deer. Snapdragons, something I didn't think that would be resistant to deer, but they are, snapdragons. Lace leaf maples, any of the Japanese maples, any of the maples are resistant to deer, other than the fact that their trunks are not resistant, because in the rutting season, a deer will come scrape the trunk of a young tree and can do some severe damage to it. But they don't eat the leaves. Sage, another deer-resistant plant. Crocosmia is another good one. Coleus is on our list. Osteospermum is on the list. Genista, the broom, is on our list. Leyland cypress is on the list, and it's very cedar-like, so if you want something cedar-like that's resistant to deer, Leyland cypress is a good one. The hydrangea serrata bluebird. Ken says it's the only hydrangea that he knows of that's resistant to deer. Hydrangea serrata bluebird. Any of the narcissus family are resistant to deer, and that is exactly opposite to the tulip family. The deer love tulips. It's like pudding to them. But narcissus, daffodil family, are resistant to deer. Zinnias, a really good Okanagan annual. Zinnias are very resistant to deer. The alliums, all the alliums are resistant to deer. Digitalis, foxglove, is resistant to deer. And Artemisia tridentata, the Artemisia's, that's the big sage and other sages are resistant to deer. Rabbit brush is another deer-resistant native plant. Poppies are resistant to deer. Iris and penstemons. So can you think of anything else that would be resistant to Bambi, who has left the room, by the way?
Well, you've got quite a list there.
Good selection.
It's not a problem that I have ever had at home, because the place is surrounded by a 5-foot chain link fence, which wouldn't stop a deer at all. But the deer are well aware of the fact that there are dogs inside.
Yeah. Dogs are a good deterrent to deer.
There are many times, well, not many times, but quite often at night, my dog will suddenly jump up and exit through the dog door, and I hear him barking down the bottom, and within a few minutes he's back.
With little bits of deer hair in his mouth?
No, but a little out of breath, but I'm pretty certain that's what he's gone after.
One of the plants that you've got in your yard that is so fascinating to me, and I just had to have one, so I bought one when I was down in Seattle, is the foxtail lily, the
Aramuris.
Aramuris, yes. And I bought kind of a pink-colored one, and it only grew about 3 feet. Is it going to grow large like yours, or is it?
No, you've got a different species.
Okay.
The tall one is Aramuris robustus.
Okay.
And it is not, well, it's easier described as a white with a very, very faint pink or orange overtone. But the smaller ones are the colored ones.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but they grow from seed. I mean, they sell seed without any problem at all.
Well, I'm looking forward to see what happens to it this year. It did a similar thing as my shooting star, my Dodecathion, did. In the summer, the foliage just kind of disappeared. Yeah. And then I'm hoping it'll just pop back again in the spring. That was fascinating when you came by my yard, Dan, and you looked, and I was showing you my shooting star, and I said, the thing died, and you said, no, just hang on, it comes back every year.
Yeah. The foliage estivates, disappears in the summertime.
Yeah.
Somewhat like the leaves of the Saskatoon.
Okay.
You'll notice Saskatoon bushes tend to drop a lot of leaves in the heat of the summer.
Yes.
To conserve moisture.
Right. That's part of being their drought.
That is their reaction to the hot, dry conditions.
Yeah.
That's the same thing that's happening to that, what I suspect is a weeping fig in the seniors center. Weeping figs do not like to be moved.
No.
Even from one side of the room to the other.
Right.
They're
touchy.
They're touchy.
They're one of the more touchy houseplants that you can buy is the weeping fig. 250-862-2525. We're going to take a break prior to the last section. If you want to call in today, you're going to have to call in fairly soon. We're going to give you time to do that by taking a break now, and then we'll go right through to the end at 10 o'clock. And, we'll be back with more AM 1150. We are back with you on a beautiful Saturday morning in December. and it feels almost like it's spring right now. It could be spring, but don't start putting your tomatoes out yet, because that wouldn't work. Unless you've got a greenhouse like I have, and I'm enjoying the heck out of my greenhouse, Dan. If you've got a minute or two after the show, you can have a little peek at the greenhouse. Otherwise, you can come middle of winter and pick some tomatoes. How's that?
Oh, I'd come about 3 o'clock in the morning and just raid the joint.
Yeah, I just raid it. Yeah. Well, I'm rooting some special plants for you. That one from Madagascar that's got that smell of
that smell of gasoline.
Yeah, gasoline. When you scrape it with your thumb, it smells like gasoline.
Operculicaria dicarii.
Yes. I'm glad you remembered that one, because I've got them rooting for you.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. And they make really good bonsai material too. You can make a nice
Yeah.
little bonsai out of them. Okay, well, we're getting down towards the end of the show this morning. 250-862-2525 if you want to give us a call. And we can answer your gardening questions, as we've done for 35 years on the air. And loved every minute of it, of course. Started off at CKOV back in the days in 1983. We were on CKOV for a number of years. Then we went to CKIQ, which is out on the highway there where the Holiday Inn is. That's where the station was. And then when I closed our business and I went over and helped Bylands out, we started on this station in 1997. So, and it's been 1,001 shows on this station and a number on the earlier stations. A total of 1,674. So we're closing in on 1,700 shows. And really, we're going to be closing in on 2,000 shows in the next few years here. Okay, so we're going to go back to the phone lines to answer your gardening questions here. And Frankie is on the line. Good morning, Frankie.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Congratulations on your long run on the radio.
Thank you.
Amaryllises.
Yes.
I had an amaryllis last year at Christmas time. Did all the things that you're supposed to do through the summer season.
Mm-hmm.
Cut it off, give it a rest, and I've got two questions. One is it really true they should be really crowded in a small pot? That's the first question. Maybe you want to deal with that first.
Definitely, that's been my understanding, that they do better if they're in a tight pot.
The one that I have growing here now, it's more than a year old to me. Mm-hmm. It's starting to make shoots out from the edge, like it's multiplying. Is that normal?
Yeah, it's normal for them to have little pups, as they call them.
Yeah, it's doing its natural thing. I would recommend that it be in a ceramic pot, clay pot, rather than a plastic one. It is certainly true that they do better if they are pot bound, so the bulbs get quite tight in the pot, and that will promote a lot of flower. I've got one at home at the moment that is going to be, it's budding now, and at count early this morning I looked at it, and I think it's going to have about 6 flower stems.
Beautiful.
Coming up.
Frankie, back to your plant. Are you seeing a bud come up, or are you just in the center of the plant, or are you just seeing pups?
I probably have both.
Okay. Good.
When you get pups, you'll get a leaf will appear, usually 2. A bud will come up beside the leaf, and the bud will be a little thicker than the leaf. You can tell a bud fairly quickly once they start to emerge.
And the rationale for mentioning that is what?
Well, you just want to discern between a leaf and a bud. I mean, if sometimes they come up, they're blind and they don't bloom.
No, I understand. But these volunteer ones that are coming up from, like I have 2 that are coming up, will they eventually form into another bulb?
Yes.
So at sometime in the future, I should attempt to harvest that second bulb off the side of the first one?
Yes, you can
help me with that, please.
Well, if you're getting too many sort of things in the pot, then by all means take them out of the pot, separate the bulbs, and you can plant them on. I would suggest, if you want to keep them, putting 2 bulbs together in a pot by themselves. They will then expand, they will grow and flower normally, and then produce their own pups.
Yeah.
So this is all new to me. So help me with the time frame on when I should perhaps split those.
Yeah, I just did that last year when my amaryllis had finished its bloom. I then separated them at that point in time. Now, I don't think there's any specific time that is better or worse, but I was very successful in separating the little pups. I've got 3 pups, and I separated them and I put them in single pots. But I think what I might do is, like Dan said, plant them together in a cluster, and they might be happier. But just putting them in a separate pot with regular potting soil would do the job, Frankie. And you can do that. I would suggest maybe March.
Very well.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the show, and I appreciate your help, and I've gardened all my life, but amaryllis is a little new to me.
Well, Frankie, we appreciate your participation today.
Thanks. You have a great day.
Take care.
Merry Christmas.
You as well. Merry Christmas to you. Now, we've got one last caller for the day, and it's Carol. Good morning, Carol.
Hi.
Hi, Carol.
Hi. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
2 more things for your deer-resistant list. I have lilacs and gladioli they don't seem to touch.
Gladiola and lilac. Yep. I'm going to add that to the list. So you swear on a stack of Bibles that this
you
is
bet.
True information.
Okay. We've had them a dozen years, and we get herds of deer coming through our place. They don't touch them.
Perfect. Well, this is good first-hand knowledge. I love it. Local first-hand knowledge. So lilac. Okay. I wonder if it's all, this is regular common lilac do you have there?
Yeah, and a variegated lilac, too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so any syringa, they don't go after.
Yeah, we have two different properties, one in East Kelowna and one up in Ellison above the airport, and deer there, both places, and no problems.
Cool. Well, we appreciate that info. Thank you for calling.
Thanks for the show. Bye.
Oh, you're very welcome. Very welcome. And we've had a good time today. Dan and I, it's been a low-key show, just chatting about gardening, because that's what Dan and I do when we see each other. He's a man of all sorts of interests, and I appreciate your friendship, Dan. Thanks for coming on today.
You're welcome, Don.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Happy to be here.
And we'll certainly enjoy having you here for our big Christmas special coming up in a couple of weeks. On the 22nd of December, tune in to our Christmas special, and we're going to have all sorts of guests on and special things going on, which we do every year at this time of year. It's a great time to reflect on the past year and reflect on the future, reflect on family and friends, and that's really what it's all about. We are going to, hey, I've got to get a copy of that book. What's the name of it again? So people can look. I mean, if you're interested in Kelowna history.
The name of the book is The Valley of Youth.
Yeah, Valley of Youth, published in 1948.
Yep. It's... I can tell you the publisher.
Yeah, it is amazing. I'm looking so forward to reading this if I can get my hands on one.
It's the Caxton Printers Limited of Caldwell, Idaho.
Okay.
And the author is C.W. Holliday.
Okay, so it's Holiday or Halliday?
Holiday.
Holiday. Oh, like Doc Holliday.
Probably Doc Holliday's cousin.
It could be his
cousin.
Could be, yeah. Well, that's really interesting. I'm looking forward to reading that, because I just love reading firsthand, and I would call that fairly firsthand knowledge. Written in 48, as I said, he's probably interviewed a number of people that were actually here in those early days, and exciting. So I again remind you that in a couple of weeks we're going to have our very special Christmas show. And after that, we will take one Saturday off. We always traditionally take one Saturday off over the Christmas break, and then we're back at her again in January. And I also want to mention, which is very important to mention this, is our trip to Seattle, the flower show, the Northwest Flower and Garden Show, which is something that happens every year. We've been doing this for now 15 years, going down, taking a busload of people down to the show, and the reception is always, it's well received. We really have a good time, and I invite you to, if you want to get on the bus, you want to act on it now. Don't put it off, because the bus usually fills up. And we leave this year on February 21st. We go away for 4 days, And in order to be on the bus with Ken and I, you want to give the Sun Fun Tours a call, and that is Kelowna. The Kelowna number for Sun Fun Tours is 250-763-6133. Call them, book yourself a seat on the bus, a room at the hotel. It's all included. Very reasonable 4-day jaunt. We're at the show for 2 days. We drop in and see Brian Minter on the way home, which is always a treat for people. And it's just a great trip. So keep that in mind. If you if you have a very special person that you want to give a very special Christmas gift to, you may want to think about buying them a trip to this flower show in Seattle. On that note, we're going to say goodbye. Goodbye, Dick. Oh, no, it's not. That was an old television show. And I'm going to give my tip of the week and plant of the week, and then we're going to be out of here. My tip of the week is take care of your Christmas tree when you put it in. It's they can be touchy. So make a fresh cut, put it in boiling water for the first fill up, and never let the water go down below the cut-off trunk, or it will reseal. My plant of the week is the Christmas tree, and next week we'll talk more about the various trees that are on the market that are available to people. And, so there you go. Dan, your plant of the week was?
My plant of the week was the Rose Darlow's Enigma, and it's one of the first to start blooming and one of the last to quit.
And it just quit just recently?
It just quit just the other day.
Perfect.
And my piece of information for the week is, don't forget that BC Highways have been working on West Side Road, and they have now completed the section just to the north of La Casa, and it is now a pleasure to drive around that corner instead of a hair-raising experience. So on your next trip to Fintry, that's one less problem to deal with.
Yep. And we'll talk more about Fintry in the new year.
We will. And Merry Christmas to everybody out there.
And Dan, thank you for being here. And Gurinder, thank you again for keeping the operation moving. And we will see you again next week with more AM 1150 Garden Show.